Pokémon is generally a series that is seen as for kids. While in reality it's a series that is for all ages, it is most certainly kid-friendly. Most of the time, that is. Over the years, and seemingly out of nowhere, Pokémon has had its fair share of adult moments that you wouldn't think a series like Pokémon would even attempt, yet there they are. So today we're going to be highlighting 10 times Pokémon got very adult. With that said, this video will still be about as G-rated as my videos usually are. I'm not going to go that far off the rails with the detail or anything, but this is still going to be quite the fun video regardless, so let's get right to it. We might as well start with essentially the first adult moment in Pokémon ever that doesn't take more than about 10 minutes of gameplay to encounter. Upon first arriving in Viridian City in Pokémon Red and Blue, your path to Route 2 will be blocked by an old guy laying in the road, who is mentioned to need his morning coffee before he can get up. However, in the original Japanese version, the man is lying in the road because he's drunk. Game Freak certainly didn't waste any time including some adult content in their very first Pokémon game, although this one largely amounts to Japanese culture being a little less sensitive to these kinds of topics, but it's certainly alarming on our end nevertheless. However, there are also plenty of other racy moments in the games that come directly from the English versions of the games themselves. Next, we'll jump from Gen 1 to Gen 7, and from drunkenness to literal child abuse. In Pokémon Sun and Moon, you'll get a chance to go to Guzma's house, the leader of Team Skull, or rather his parents' house. Upon doing some examining of the home, it's heavily implied that Guzma was beaten by his parents as a child, even going so far as to include a set of golf clubs in the home that, when interacted with, are described as all bent and beaten up, implying, when combined with everything else in the home, that Guzma was beaten with golf clubs by most likely his father. Even with just these implications and being completely optional to encounter, this is incredibly dark for a Pokémon game. I mean, golf clubs? Really? That's not to say that it's not welcome though, because this kind of maturity is just the sort of thing that many people have been wanting to see more of in Pokémon. Something that doesn't hurt those that don't understand it, but can also be enjoyed by those that do and spend the time to go looking for it. Another character, or should I say characters, with a pretty consistently dark backstory are your various rivals throughout the series. This doesn't include all rivals, but several of them, including Silver, Wally, Gladion, and Bede, all had a pretty bleak set of circumstances handed to them. First, in the case of Silver, he was literally abandoned and essentially made an orphan by his own father, Team Rocket boss Giovanni, in an event we actually got to witness for ourselves, where Giovanni looks him in the eyes and walks out on him after the fall of Team Rocket. Wally, meanwhile, takes a different approach for his story and is weak and sickly throughout the game, but tries his best to work through it and become strong as a Pokémon trainer. In Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire though, this story takes an extremely dark turn, as during your final meeting and battle with him during the course of the game on Victory Road, you meet him in an area filled with red flowers. Well, these flowers can actually be identified as red spider lilies, flowers that are associated with final goodbyes and are said to grow wherever people will be seeing each other for the last time, implying that Wally, after your battle with him, actually dies from his illness. Moving along though, Gladion has a similar story to Silver, as he was fiercely neglected and abused by his mother thanks to her being so obsessed with the Ultra Beasts that she shirked any parental responsibility and basically forced Gladion to leave home, because becoming homeless was literally better for him than staying with his own mother. Oh, and by the way, his father also disappeared and lost all memories of him and his family when Gladion was just a boy, so yeah, there's that too. And finally, when we come to Bede, Bede is outright stated in Pokemon Sword and Shield to be an orphan that Chairman Rose took under his wing after seeing potential in him. This made Bede desperate for Rose's approval, only for Rose to abandon him as well. Thankfully, Bede was once again mentored by Opal, and it worked out for him in the end, but he did not have a pretty backstory to say the least. And it's kinda crazy how the rivals in Pokemon, on a fairly consistent basis, have such dark and almost morbid backstories. From grim backgrounds to even more wildly inappropriate senior citizens, we of course couldn't have a video like this without talking about the Peeping Tom of Celadon City. Upon arriving at the Celadon City gym, you'll see an old man looking into the window, and if you talk to him, he'll say, "Hehehe, this gym is great, it's full of women." However, he only does this in the original Kanto games and Fire Red and Leaf Green. In later games, this quote is edited to say strong trainers instead of women, which frankly is much more generic and lame, so it's a real shame this man was stripped of his creepy inappropriateness because it was pretty hilarious at the same time. And if that old man has taught us anything, it's that randomly, when you're least expecting it, Pokemon games will hit you with innuendos that'll almost make you fall out of your chair. From the couple challenging you to a double battle with an Onyx and Cloyster, to the girl hinting at where she puts her Pokeballs in her bikini, to the hot, sweaty hiker asking you if you've ever had a lover while you ride with him alone on a Ferris wheel, there are innuendos all over in the Pokemon games, to the point where you question what the translators were thinking or how the game still got away with an E rating. I'm not even going to be able to list half of them here either. For instance, you also got one of Dodrio's Pokedex entries that says, apparently Dodrio's heads aren't the only thing it has 3 of. Like, excuse me, ew. And from there, you've got about 1.5 million lines of text that probably weren't meant in a bad way, but leave you questioning what you just read, like this quote from Lana in Pokemon Sun and Moon. It definitely adds a lot more character to the games, so I can't say I'm completely disgusted that they're in there, and they do make for a good laugh, but my goodness, even by those standards, it does get a little crazy sometimes. When it comes to adult things in Pokemon, most of the time the devil is in the details, and one of those details is most assuredly the Pokedex. It's literally the perfect place to hide some more mature stuff, since you don't have to read or pay attention to the entries by any means, but if you do, you actually find a lot of really dark stuff. We already mentioned that unusual Dodrio Dex entry, but just to name a few more, you have one of Phantump's Dex entries that mention how it's the spirit of a dead child that got lost in the forest. Then there's Yamask, who is the spirit of a dead person who carries around a mask of its face from its previous life when it was a human and often looks at it and cries. Drifloon, meanwhile, in one of its Pokedex entries, mentions how it kidnaps children and takes them to the afterlife. Hypnose mentions that it just kidnaps children, period, and that doesn't even cover the Mega Evolution section of the Pokedex. The Pokedex reveals that Mega Evolution is actually downright torturous for the Pokemon that undergo it. Most commonly, a lot of these Dex entries will talk about how the Pokemon is actually in pain while Mega Evolved. But just to give you a few examples, there's Mega Glalie entry that states Mega Evolving literally broke its jaw, Garchomp's arms and wings melted, yes that's right, I said melted upon Mega Evolving, and it's not even the only Pokemon that melts when it Mega Evolves, as Houndoom's entry mentions that its claws and the tip of its tail are melting as a result of Mega Evolution that are, quote, painful to Houndoom itself. Don't get me wrong, I am all for dark Pokedex entries, but those Mega entries in particular really take it to the next level, and it doesn't seem like the Pokedex is going to slow down in that department anytime soon. Yet another super dark thing about Pokemon that largely gets overlooked because it's mostly theoretical, but even still is extremely likely to be intentional, are the various tragedies and dark historical events that are referenced in some of the games. For instance, you may or may not have heard of the Unova Ground Zero theory, but the idea is that Route 4 in Unova is actually meant to represent Ground Zero of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. And seeing as how Unova is based off of New York, and Route 4 is a desolate, dusty place with incomplete, half-constructed buildings, the idea holds up convincingly well, especially because Castelia City is also based on New York City, which Route 4 sits right next to. And it's actually pretty unsettling that Game Freak would think to actually include something like that in the game. Similarly, in Pokemon X and Y, there are also signs that the Holocaust is being referenced, as the goal of Team Flare is to essentially wipe everyone out who isn't beautiful, which is pretty consistent with the Holocaust, and Team Flare's leader, Lysander, is even the creator of the Holocaster, which sounds extremely similar to the term Holocaust as well. There's even evidence in the Pokemon Gold and Silver beta that the original purpose of the Ruins of Alph was to be a parallel to the Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bomb sites, as they are ruins that were placed in similar locations on the original Johto map to the two Japanese cities, since Johto was based on all of Japan at that time. This is in addition to other evidence as well, although ultimately this did not make the final game, obviously. Despite being just theories, these might be the darkest things that have ever been included in a Pokemon game, because there really is no reason to make those references other than for some disturbing subliminal messaging, which once again makes Pokemon a much darker game if you simply pay attention to these smaller details. Moving along though, another kind of shocking concept that's normalized within the world of Pokemon is Slowpoke tail eating. It started with Team Rocket cutting off the tails of Slowpoke to seemingly sell them on the black market in Pokemon Gold and Silver, as apparently they are very tasty. That seems really cruel and unusual, although it seems to be the equivalent of nothing more than a seafood delicacy in the games. However, it still seems really odd with a more mammalian Pokemon like Slowpoke. Furthermore, there's also the whole conflict of interest about whether Pokemon should be eaten like animals are, but nevertheless, they just threw the severed tails of Slowpoke in the game like it was no big deal. It might be a normal thing in the Pokemon world, but it always seemed very shocking and unnerving to me, especially as a younger kid, that something like that was included in the game so nonchalantly. So I figured I would include it in the video. Adult content in Pokemon is not limited to just the games though, as it makes its way into just about every medium that they offer, including the anime. There are multiple banned episodes that are banned for this reason, including, well, this, as well as another episode where the Safari Zone warden pulls a gun on Ash and his friends, Team Rocket pull a gun right back at him and put it to his head, and Meowth dresses up like Hitler. And that is all in just one episode. The adult stuff doesn't just stop at the banned episodes, however, as there are multiple innuendos and a multitude of shockingly mature things in the series. One of my favorites of which is this wonderful Brock quote right here. Yes, he actually did say this is a real thing. I could go on, but there are simply too many of those kinds of examples to go over in this video alone. It's safe to say though that the anime has done a lot of hilariously inappropriate stuff over the years. And from the anime to the manga, the Pokemon manga really puts the graphic in graphic novel. It does not hold anything back, as you see Pokemon literally sliced in half and impaled, you see the decomposing dead bodies of Pokemon, and there's even a whole spin-off manga called Pokemon Rebirth featuring very suggestive scenarios of girls fused with Pokemon. So, you know, the exact kind of stuff you thought you would be getting when deciding to become a Pokemon fan. Even all of that is just the tip of the iceberg, to be honest, but it's not the most surprising thing in the world either, seeing as how manga adaptations do tend to be significantly darker than their game or show counterparts, although it never fails to surprise when you see something like that in anything Pokemon related. Well, there you have it everyone. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you're new for more Pokemon content all the time. You can also check out my Pokemon remixes on Spotify and my Pokemon Cardinal project if you would like to support the channel further, which is very much appreciated. With that said, I will be back with another video very soon, and until then, as always, I love you all, and I will smell you guys later.